Okay, thank you very much for being here at one more class of Lab XP. And today we are honored to have Joshua Kerievsky to give a keynote for us. He's CEO of Industrial Logic, and he's a very well known on the agile world. He's been working with agile things since '96, and he's an early pioneer of extreme programming, lean software development, lean startup, and several things. He's very well known because he has the amazing book, Refactoring into Patterns. And Joshua, it's a great pleasure to have you here. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Alfredo. Thank you to Jao and everyone else who's helped to make this happen. And I have worked with different people from Brazil, and I can tell you that it's been some of the best collaborations I've ever had. So really excited to talk with you today. I would encourage you to ask questions of me and don't be shy. Please don't be shy. Make the most of this by asking questions. Is there a way to are we using the chat feature for questions maybe? Okay, great. So don't be shy, please.
But don't bother reading it. We can read and make the questions for you when it happens. João can take care of it.
Okay. So let's get started. I'm going to present, I think, here. So let me share my screen. I'll just go with the entire screen. I have to give it some. Oh, okay. So it wants me to quit Chrome in order to get access. So security's gotten tighter on Macs. Okay. I might need to come in and come back out. Unless I do this differently. Let me see if another way to do this. I can share differently. Let me see, present, I'll say a window. Chrome, Keynote, here we are. Can't share your screen. Google Chrome might not have permissions to use screen recording. What a pain in the butt. I'm sorry about this, folks. Open system preferences. So this is, security is usually an afterthought in our industry. I'm gonna have to come right back. I'm gonna have to quit Chrome and come right back in.
Take our time. We are in the virtual world. There are dogs, cars, honks. Don't worry, and some problems. Don't take our time.
I'll be right back.
Pequenos problemas técnicos. Voltaremos em minutos.
Okay, it was muted, so you can hear me too, right? Okay, great. So I'm not going to be able to see the chat, so let me know when to pause and stuff. Okay, so here we are. So the topic I wanted to talk about today is kind of a challenging topic. let me, when I say it's a challenging topic, this is a topic that may sometimes, it could actually bother people in my industry, because they're like, you shouldn't really teach this. People aren't ready to hear this message. But I think it's good for you to be aware of real software development in the industry, which is not theoretical. When you're building software in the industry, there's budgets at work, there's money involved, there's all kinds of factors. So sufficient design really is a practice that comes out of industry, comes out of working in real companies with real people, real constraints, real budgets. So that's the topic that I wanted to present to you today. So let's start off here. Do you think this is sufficient design? Or what about flying on an airplane that uses a little bit of, we call it duct tape?
Risky?
Or maybe fixing a window like this for a flight?
Doesn't seem confident.
Yeah, or look at this ridiculous wheelchair. Or this job here of outfitting a wooden window onto a car. Trying to give you some ideas for what is sufficient design and what is it not. Look at this, fixing a car with a can from a beer. I think that's a Foster's beer.
We have a nice word for that in Portuguese. It's called gambiarra, which means trying to do something which, well, that's exactly the definition of this word in Portuguese. Those kind of jobs.
Okay. You say cambiar?
Yes, gambiarra.
Cambiar, okay.
Gambia.
Yes. It's an improvised workaround.
Improvise, yeah. So like this, maybe you need some hot water in your shower. Do you see how it's plugged in at the bottom there? Not too safe, right? So these are some people that work at Industrial Logic, and we think that, you know, when you're programming, you can have two different voices in your head. One voice says, just get the code working, don't care too much about quality, we just got to get it working. The other voice is, no, make good design, make it a beautiful system, have automated testing, perfect, excellent design. No, we have to ship something now. Just get it working. Stop being a perfectionist. Yeah, but you're going to create all kinds of technical debt, and it's going to be hard for the next programmer to make a change. This is the kind of back and forth that we often see. Do you ever experience this when you're writing code? Comes up a lot for us. All right, so very quickly, I'm the CEO of Industrial Logic. At the end of this year, we're going to be 25 years old. So long time of being in this business. I still love it. So if you're thinking of having a career in software development, you know, I would highly recommend it. I think it's a fantastic, you know, industry and filled with challenges, and I still love it. I'm somewhat known for this thing here, which is modern, we call it modern agile. And really that just means today's agile. It's not really a brand, it's just trying to get at the core of what it means to be agile. And these 4 principles are extremely important to us. We have this in Portuguese, by the way. So if you go to modernagile.org and look at the languages there, you'll find the Portuguese version. Hopefully this makes sense. And notice we have, in the green, we have deliver value continuously. We want to deliver value to our customers continuously, regular flow of value to them. But in order to do that, we need to make safety a prerequisite. We have to have a safe way to work. Safety is key to performance. If without good safety, you don't have a lot of high performance, right? Think about when software is crashing or when there's lots and lots of defects. You're not a high performing team because you don't have adequate safety in place. Safety is an interesting word. I guess so in Portuguese, in most languages in the world, the words security and the word safety are the same, right? There's just a word called security. In English, we have safety and security, but we can think of it as the same thing. Experimenting and learning rapidly is something where in the culture, it's very useful to be able to try experiments, to be able to try new things, see how they work out. It's okay to fail, right? We like to say that, fail fast. So hopefully you're failing quickly, but you shouldn't be criticized for failing because failing means you're trying. Right? Amazon.com CEO Jeff Bezos says, if we're not failing at least 20% of the time, then we're not pushing hard enough. We're not pushing hard enough. We should be failing a certain good percentage of the time. Some companies, Eli Lilly is a pharmaceutical company. They started initiating what they called failure parties in the late 1990s, or early 1990s. To celebrate scientific work done to create a new medicine that might have failed. But they get together and they celebrate it. They have a failure party. So experimenting and learning is also another key part of software development, is learning very rapidly. Ultimately, we're doing all of this for this yellow segment here, which is we're trying to make people's lives better. We're trying to make our customers have a much better experience. And we're trying to make our own teammates and our own organization be a great place to work. So that's what make people awesome means. Any questions, thoughts, comments about this? Okay.
Joshua, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
When you say you talked a little bit about safety and how safety in this context had to do with, well, not having an environment that is bad in the sense that, well, everything's a chaos, basically. But do you believe that this safety also crosses through being free to make mistakes?
Yes. I think that so in many regards, okay, what you're looking at here is more of a Venn diagram. There's overlap between the different parts. So there's an overlap between experiment and learn rapidly and make safety a prerequisite, which means that it should be safe to fail, unless the failure is so dangerous to the company or the people that it becomes dangerous, really, really dangerous, right? There's certain things that obviously you don't want to do that go too far. But we're not talking about that in general. We're talking about trying something and maybe, it failed. It wasn't, it was something that could have worked, but didn't. And you shouldn't be like severely criticized or fired for that reason. You took a chance on something. Years ago, Google tried making a social media platform called Wave. Has anyone ever heard of Google Wave? This was maybe 10 or 12 years ago. Well, if you haven't heard of Google Wave, it's because it was a complete failure. But Google actually promoted some of the people on that effort because they took a chance. They actually even took a financial chance. The people on the project elected to take some financial risk in order to go to pursue this Google Wave. And those people were promoted after it failed. So Google has the kind of culture that embraces failure, embraces change and trying new things. So if you're looking for more information on Modern Agile, there's a YouTube show called The Modern Agile Show, and you can check it out on YouTube. I have lots of interviews I've done of people and talks and things like that there. All right, but let's get back to sufficient design. So here's a phrase I like to use, which is quality tuned to context. Well, what do we mean by that? Quality tuned to context. Basically, it's saying that you have to understand the context of the environment you're in. When you're working somewhere, you really need to understand what are the major pressures that people are under here. What are the customers struggling with? What is the organization struggling with? What are individuals struggling with? Maybe they have a tremendous amount of technical debt. See this picture here? I took this picture. It's actually from a video I made. What do you think this is? Any guesses?
The floor?
What's that?
The floor of a hotel?
Yes, it's the floor of the hotel. But what's the white thing going down the center of the floor of the hotel? Yeah, it's
Is
a
it
piece
a
of
written
code.
code? Oh,
Yes, it's code. It's written. It's the code that we've printed out, and I pasted it together. It's a single function. One function. It's 28 pages long.
Wow.
So remember, quality tuned to context, right? This system here was extremely important to the company. This was a company in Toronto, the suburbs of Toronto, Canada. Makes software that they make hardware and they make software, right? This software was very important to the entire organization and to all of the partner organizations, their partners. But this software was crashing. It was crashing on a regular basis. In other words, people would be acquiring data from the hardware, and then the software would just crash. They're the industry leader. Didn't matter. They were losing customers because of software crashes. So when we came to help them, their product manager had a long list of new features to build. Okay. We told him we are not building any new features. You have such a quality problem here that the only thing we're going to deliver is higher quality. No new features, just higher quality. So on this particular project, we got super clear about what success looked like. We said we should be able to acquire data for 48 continuous hours without the software failing. No software crashes. 48 hours of continuous data acquisition. And that was our goal. And all new features got pushed aside. We said, nope, we'll wait for another time. And we did it. We worked with them. We wrote tons of automated tests. We started to teach them how to refactor, so how to write better design, to design the code better. We got them to start collaborating in like pair programming style. There wasn't mob programming back then. Today we do lots of mob programming. I think Woody Zuhl might have talked to you. But back then it was a lot of pairing and changing pairs. And then they shipped it about 6 to 9 months later. They shipped this new higher quality software with no new features. And the response from the customers was incredible. The customers said, wow, this is the most stable version of this product you've shipped in years. Thank you so much. I can finally use it without it crashing. Quality tuned to context. We have to tune, we have to adjust the quality based upon the context. In this context, the only thing we could focus on was fixing all of the problems associated with crashing software. So when we approach sufficient design, we have to basically say, what's the context? What would I need to do given this context? Does that make sense? Okay, okay, good, good. Now, have you ever heard of a turbulence chart? Turbulence charts basically look at the complexity of the software. So if we run the software through any kind of a complexity tool, which typically will look at cyclomatic complexity. Are you all familiar with that term, cyclomatic complexity? If not, it's kind of the number of branches in the software, like, you know, if statement within an if statement, within an if else statement, within another if statement, right? Very complicated code. That's conditional logic. So there are tools that look at complexity like that. They often call it cyclomatic complexity. And that's what the axis on the left is for. And then the axis on the right, changes, is how often are you making changes to something, right? How often are you changing the code? So imagine if you have very high complexity and you're changing the code frequently. High complexity and changing the code frequently, that's a recipe for big problems. So that's another way to look at the context to understand what would be a smart thing to do for this code base. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now back to this wheelchair here. Turns out this is no joke. This is no joke at all. This is a real wheelchair. And it's a very useful wheelchair. In fact, there was a couple from the United States. They went on vacation somewhere, I think somewhere in Africa. They saw a young person crawling across the road, like literally just crawling, hand with their arms because their legs don't work. And they couldn't believe this, and they were like, why doesn't this person have a wheelchair? Well, it turns out wheelchairs are very expensive. So the person, the husband was an engineer, and he went back to the United States and said, I'm going to figure out a way to make an affordable wheelchair. And he created the free wheelchair mission. And he focused on engineering a wheelchair that did not cost a lot of money. So his goal was manufacture in bulk at low cost. Okay. So he had a very specific quality goal, and he wanted to deliver this at no cost to the least served people in the world. So the goal was to quickly deliver these wheelchairs to 20 million people. And to do that, he had to basically use cheap existing parts that he could buy with very little money. Bike tires, patio, like plastic patio furniture, you know, little wheels that are really cheap to get. He managed to get it down to like $59 US, which is really inexpensive for a wheelchair. It's so inexpensive that with donations from people, you could be giving these for free to the most underserved people in the world. So why do I bring this up? Because it's an example of making it happen, building something very deliberately. Sufficient design says, what's the context? Okay, the context here is low cost wheelchair. Great. Now that I understand the financial aspects, the financial challenge, now I can do the design properly. So again, knowing the finances behind something critical in the real world to your design. If you don't understand the finances and you're just coming up with all kinds, you could come up with the most incredible wheelchair design, but if it's expensive, it's not going to meet the goal. So again, professional software developers are not afraid to understand finances. Now that gets us into this idea here that not all code is created equal. You know, in the United States, we talk about that all humans, all people are created equal. And I agree with that. But not all code is created equal. I don't think code is the same as a human. Not all code is created equal. Some code is more important than other code. And we have to treat it that way. We treat code differently. In The Wizard of Oz, the famous movie, we have the star, Dorothy, right? She's the most important character in the movie. And then we have her basic collaborators and her dog and the other actors here that are very important to the movie, but not as important as her. And then we have the extras, right? The people that are just in the background. They're really not as important to the movie, but they have to be there. So we have different categories of importance when it comes to even making a movie. And when we build a professional product, right? This is a product that Industrial Logic makes, and it's our e-learning. So Industrial Logic, my company, makes e-learning software. And it's been a lot of work over many years to produce this stuff. And it is an investment we've made. We've invested in building product. in order to sell and help people in the world, make people awesome. But it involves us looking at our finances and figuring out what should we focus on and what should we not focus on. So you've all probably had experiences with plumbers. When you have a plumbing problem?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, plumbing.
I'm having
plumbing
one right
problem-
now.
Oh, you're having one right now. Okay. Yeah. Well, we've all had these problems. This is probably one of the most important things in all of our e-learning. We call it, we're visualizing a student's performance. So with this one graph, I can see how many refactorings they did. Look at all those blue dots there. Those are automated refactorings that they executed. I can see, you see the stripes of red? Those are when the tests were failing. The stripes of green are when the tests were passing. I can see a lot of data about this 4 hours of programming. If you see at the bottom right corner, there's 4 hours they've been doing this. This gives me a lot of data. And it's the heart and soul of our e-learning. It is the most important part of our e-learning. But there's other parts of our e-learning. So imagine this yellow box here is our e-learning software. Certain parts of it are super important to us making money. Other parts of it are like plumbing. For example, when I register a student, registering a student can be done by any CS, computer science programmer. They can build that, right? You're taking their data and you're sticking it into a database and giving them a login. Big deal. If I look at that code, right, I'm not going to try to make it the cleanest, best designed code in the world, because frankly, that code doesn't make me any money. It has to work. It has to not have defects. It has to have some adequate testing, but it does not have to be pristinely gorgeous, beautiful code, because it doesn't really make me money. What makes me money is stuff like this. The code that produces this has to be extremely good. That's where those dollar signs are. So if you think of a system as being composed of different parts, some parts are more valuable than other parts. And when it comes to quality, sufficient design says we got to treat different parts of the system differently based upon the role they play in our business. Any thoughts, comments, questions about that?
I have a question. These plumbers, like you said, they are important too. How you know when you need to get this better, because this is like a part of the whole system that is keeping the whole system to move forward or getting better as a whole.
If you're having defects, if you're having problems in that area of the code, regular problems, that tells you something, that you have to improve it. But if it's working just fine, and yet it might not have the best design, right? You know, let's say, for example, you have a chair in your room. It's not the most comfortable chair. It has some problems, but it works, and it's in your room. So when people come over, they really go to the living room and they spend time there. That's a much more important room in your house than maybe your room. I'm just giving an example, right? But you're trying to make decisions about what's the most important part of the system. Now, if you're having regular problems with a part of the code, it's causing pain to the customers or pain to you or your team, then you have to fix it. The question is quality. Okay, you can become an extraordinarily good software designer where you know what great design looks like. But if you try to make every piece of code have a great design, then I would say you're not a professional. Because professionals in the industry, they know when to keep something rough and good enough, versus really perfect. The areas where I make money, I want those to have much better design. The areas that are like plumbing, I want them to have good enough design. Good enough. That's the difference.
Thank you.
Any more thoughts or questions about
Joshua, can I
Yeah.
ask you something?
Yes, please.
When it comes to testing the application, the same metrics can be applied to coverage or something like this?
Yeah, I mean, maybe your testing is going to be even better for the $ code. Maybe you still need automated testing probably for even the plumbing code, but it doesn't have to be the best in the world. In other words, making everything be equal. All code is equal. All code must be clean code. You know, I don't think that is a smart way to be in business. I think you have to make decisions about where to invest your time. And think of these two words, good enough. When is something good enough? And when does it have to be much better than good enough? Well, I can't, my system has to still let people register as students, right? So my e-learning software, I have to have students, so there has to be a registration process where they become a student inside the database. So it's still essential, but anyone could write that code. There's nothing that makes my product like ultimately sell. We've sold it to Google, we've sold it to General Electric, we've sold it to Ford Motor Company. They're not buying my system because I have a login feature, right? Anyone could write a login feature. A 12-year-old kid in computer science can make a login feature. They're buying it because we built something very, very valuable that can help people become better programmers, not for the login code. So for the login code, I wanted to have a decent design, but I'm not going to go crazy. Let me put it in a different way. I might have a really experienced software designer come and look at my code and think, here's what they're going to think. You know what? Josh and his people are not such good software designers as I thought, because look at this code over here. It doesn't have the greatest design. And I would say, actually, that's intentional. That is by intention. I am not going to go crazy on the design in an area that isn't frankly too important. It has to have a good design. It has to have some basic testing, but I'm not going to invest all my time and energy to make it pristine and perfect, because I'm a businessman too. And I have to invest wisely. Another way to look at it is sufficient design when code meets cache. Very few people in the software field talk about this. Very few people talk about thinking about money. I run a small business. For us, the amount of money we have to invest in a product is very small. We have to use it very wisely. And so I have to think about, where do I invest and where do I say good enough is okay? So one thing I think about a lot is this particular matrix. Do I need to do something in the fast and dirty category? Or could it be that I take a lot of time? I'm in the bottom right corner and I'm saying it's got to be really clean code, really beautifully designed, and it can take a lot of time. I don't care. Clean and slow. Or am I somehow able to do it fast and it still has a clean design? Or in the worst case, it took forever, it's slow, and it's a dirty design. It's a bad design. This matrix makes me think about, what am I trying to do? What if, for example, I have an idea for a feature. I don't know if anyone cares about this feature. So I want to put a test into production to see if anyone would even click, anyone would even care about the new feature. So I'm not going to build the new feature. I'm just going to build a fake version of it that people can click on. Are you familiar with this concept? I call it a feature fake. I can do that feature fake. I can put something that looks like a feature, but it's not. I can put that into production rapidly, and I can do it fast and dirty. Because frankly, I don't want to invest right now until I get evidence that any one of my users would even care about that feature. If I find out they do care about it, then I would rip out the fast and dirty version, and I would probably create a very clean and well-designed version that might take me a bit longer, so it'd be a little slower to produce. But those are the kinds of decisions I'm making based upon evidence about the importance or lack of importance of a feature.
Joshua, can I ask you
Yeah.
a question?
Yeah.
In this transition from the fake feature that is placed right in the fast dirty position, how is this process between taking this fake down and putting the true code there? Like, is there any middle path prototyping or something like that to keep probing the environment until you have enough evidence to, okay, now I'm gonna invest in the best of the code and take the time it takes?
Yeah, so I'll give you a quick example. In our e-learning, I had an idea for students to be able to have a spontaneous chat on any given page in the e-learning. Right? So imagine several students are all using the e-learning, they're all on the same page. Why can't they just start chatting with each other? I learned about this because the company Intuit, they make tax software. They let their own customers have a chat about the tax forms that they're filling out. I thought, that's brilliant. I want to do that in my e-learning. But instead of building the feature and investing in the feature and spending a lot of time to build that feature, I said, what if no one cares? So what we did was we put into the e-learning a fake message. It said, 22 students are online right now from 4 different countries. Join the chat, which was a little hyperlink. We just shoved it into the HTML template. No test-driven development, no refactoring. We just literally put it into the template. And we wanted to see, would people click? So we said, let's show this to 100 students and get some data. So if they clicked, a little message popped up and said, oh, sorry, this feature doesn't exist yet, this online chatting feature, how interested would you be in it? Not interested, somewhat interested, or extremely interested? The data came back that only about 6 people out of 100 were interested. That told me there's no point in building this. But I had only invested about an hour of programming to figure that out. So going back to modern Agile, learn rapidly, experiment rapidly. I spent 1 hour, I produced fast and dirty code to learn that not enough people were interested in my brilliant feature idea. And so I said, let's not build it. And we just took it out. If, on the other hand, we got data that said, oh, the students love this concept, they're going crazy for it, well, then I would have ripped out what we did temporarily and invested in much more solid code that would live for years. Does that make sense? Okay.
Joshua, I don't know if those concepts are directly related, but they remind me a lot of, well, some principles of lean startup and things
Yes.
like this, because it's the idea of bringing science to coding, right?
Yes.
Designed by experiments and try to learn if something is valuable before doing anything else.
100% correct. It is, Lean Startup was the leader in this area. And I learned about even the concept of the feature fake from a woman named Laura Klein, who worked directly with Eric Ries. Eric Ries wrote the book on Lean Startup. She worked with him. And so yes, you're 100% correct. Scientific experimentation, validating or invalidating ideas quickly and inexpensively, that's Lean Startup. That's what we're talking about here in code.
Joshua,
Yes.
what's the difference from the work of an UX designer that collects the user's needs and do this kind of prototyping from the concept that you are presenting to us and what the lean startup use? What's the difference of this?
There's no difference. Any way of learning rapidly and experimenting rapidly is good. So if a UX designer can do this rapidly and inexpensively, great. The example I gave happened to be, we did it on the live code, right? We did it in the actual system. Sometimes people behave a little differently in the real system versus if they're just given a prototype. But at the end of the day, it's how quickly are you learning about what you really need to build versus what is not necessary to build. In software industry, too much software is being produced. There are too many features that nobody ever uses. If you want to understand whether a company is mature or not, ask them, what kind of metrics do you have for the usage of your features? Feature usage metrics. It might tell them that very few features are being used, or some features are never used, in which case they should get rid of them. But very few companies even measure the usage of the features. So we end up producing way too much software that we never needed to produce in the first place.
Thank you. It makes sense.
Now this slide here says from hacker to hackerpreneur. Hacker is, I think, a good term. A hacker is always looking for, I don't mean a bad hacker, the ones that are hacking into systems to break security. But a good hacker is trying to discover a creative way to solve a problem. A hackerpreneur is a combination of two words, hacker and entrepreneur. Entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs think about solving problems for people by creating something new. I like to combine the concept of the hacker with the hackerpreneur, with the entrepreneur. So that's what that means. We built a system. We did a prototype, an MVP, minimum viable product, of a system that could monitor a team's use of refactoring. We called it the test-driven development dashboard. And we thought people could sit around and look at the data and make decisions about how good is their process. How good are they at agile engineering? So we built this prototype, this MVP, based upon the same technology in our e-learning. And then we quickly experimented with it in the marketplace, and we discovered companies weren't that interested in this. So without spending a lot of money, we had invalidated our own product idea. And that felt good. We didn't waste a lot of time and money building a product that it turns out very few people wanted to use. This was another example. Sessions was another product we built. People had asked us for it. People at Google said, I really want this feature. I want this product. So we built it. Turned out very few people used it. We got rid of it. So sufficient design doesn't always mean it's going to be a bad design. It doesn't always going to mean it's going to be a good design. A sufficient design might be excellent or poor based upon the context at hand. Excellent to poor based upon the context at hand, right? It always depends upon the context. What are you going to, how much quality will the design have? I think of it like a dial, a quality dial. And sometimes we want the dial to be on poor. Sometimes we want it to be decent. Sometimes we want it to be excellent. And another quote from James Bach. This was a paper he wrote many years ago, probably around 2000 or even earlier, that really influenced me. And he said, good enough involves rational choices, not compulsive behavior. It's a paper called Good Enough Quality. And he made me see that it's okay to ship with bugs. You can actually ship software that has bugs, and you know it has bugs. And I was of the opinion, get rid of all the bugs. But he said, no, you can actually ship with some bugs. And he's a tester. He's in software testing. So it's this concept of good enough and thinking about what is appropriate for the given context. That's sufficient design. And it's a hashtag I use occasionally. It's not that well known, but I think it's important if you're going to be a professional software developer to think about that, this practice of adjusting the quality based upon the context. So I can stop sharing.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Very interesting talk. And I really enjoy it because we can start doing it right now. Because the
Yes.
students are developing code, and I always said high quality, it's agile methods, but we can have different levels of high quality. Very high quality, just enough, or it works. So thank you very much. And people, do you have any questions, students? Up to you.
Joshua, maybe a comment. I think it's a great lecture too, and I really enjoyed it. And I think this highlights a lot the the iterative aspect of the software development, because, well, at least when you said good enough, I thought about situations when I thought, well, I can improve this code, but should I? Because I think this is the moment when, well, we can maybe think about stopping and saying, well, it's okay, it's enough, and it works, and I could improve it, but it doesn't worth it.
Exactly, exactly. You need to be thinking, not applying the exact same model everywhere. If you're going to be a professional, you're going to have to think about the context to produce the right solution, a good solution. Otherwise, you may be wasting a lot of time and money and energy. And that to me is not the height of the profession. When we start out learning software development, we're not very good. We don't know good software development. We don't know good design. We have to study and study and study to understand what good design is. But then once we know good design, which takes years, we're still not done. Because then we have to know when to apply that good design and when not to. So the journey continues. Sometimes rough and quick is the right solution. And sometimes perfectly pristine and gorgeous design is the right solution. You have to decide as a professional.
Question just popped in the chat. Can you read it?
Yeah, I think it's correct. They have a concept of Disneyland. They have a concept of, I mean, Bob Martin talks about clean code, clean architecture, clean. It's almost like a moral imperative that we be clean. I don't agree. The thing is, a lot of people that write about software design, they don't run a company. They never built a product with the constraints of a company. It's like, when I grow up, when I was 7 years old, I went and I sold lemonade in Central Park, New York City. I actually did this. I went there with my lemonade and I sold lemonade. We do this in America. I don't know if you do that in, maybe you sell caipirinhas on the street. No, I'm joking. They would sell better. And you learn, if people are not buying your lemonade, that's a problem. If the lemonade costs more than what you're making, that's a problem, right? So ultimately, as a professional developer, you have to think about context. Some companies make so much money. I mean, Google makes so much money that they're in a different league. But you're not necessarily going to work. You'll work at different companies maybe in the future, and you have to think about and understand the finances. So finances are a big deal. Existing technical debt is a big deal. You're going to be going into an industry where there's lots of systems that were built 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's a complicated ecosystem, and you don't treat everything the same way. You have to think about what makes the most sense. Where are the biggest issues to address? What do my customers need the most? Lots and lots of thinking and thinking and thinking. Sufficient design is the idea that we need to think constantly about what would be appropriate given our context.
Really great, because I always try to teach my students about to avoid the only technical excellence, but you really went beyond that, because it's quite easy to have technical excellence because you are just looking at your code and you can skip looking at your code for years. It can always be a little bit better, but good enough, it's a solution, but your ideas are much better than that. I really appreciate.
Joshua,
you.
can I
Thank you.
make another question if we have time?
Yeah, I believe
In
we
your
do. Let me check. I have to check one quick thing here. Oh, that's at 1
Sure.
o'clock. I have a 1 o'clock. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have your company and you are a developer and you are a CEO. So your company's product, well, you show it, you have some education things, but as a consultancy, I imagine that coding is also part of the job. Uh, uh, so I think this is a curious situation because most developers, when they reach these management levels, they usually are CTOs whose main concern is more the technological aspect than the business in general. So how was that for you? I mean, you told that we usually start our careers looking for the technical excellence. Then if we go more to this entrepreneurship side or the business side, then we start to grow to understand more of those constraints. So how was this journey for you in your career to understand this concept of, well, I actually need to see the financial side of things?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's maybe it's uncomfortable. The journey is a little uncomfortable because it's nice to live, to be naive and just spend and spend and spend and not think about finances. So learning to look at the financial side of it, and I work with a chief operating officer. My chief operating officer is way better at finances than me. And she will show me, she said, Josh, look how much you're spending and look how much is coming in. We have to be careful here how we spend this money. I'm like, you're right. You're absolutely right. So it's sometimes uncomfortable. But I believe that we don't want to think about these being two different worlds, software and business. To me, they come together. If you're really good, you bring them together. You can be good at both. You can learn how to be both. We want to get in our industry, we want to get rid of the silos where here's product, here's IT, and they're separate. We want to bring them together, collaborate together, build great products together. It shouldn't be separate. So to me, a great programmer thinks about the business. A great programmer is aware of the finances. That's important to be a great programmer. So not only do you have to become a great designer, but then you have to go further and get your mind around the business. That will make you truly great. So it's a journey, but I enjoy the journey very much. And what I said earlier about it being controversial is some people said to me, Josh, you cannot tell new developers that it's okay to write dirty code. And I'm saying, well, I'm gonna tell them that because that's the truth. There's time and a place to write dirty code with no tests. And there's a time, and gradually people have come along with this. Even Kent Beck now has a model where he talks about the same thing I've been saying for a long time now. Where you're in a certain phase where you don't know enough information, it's okay to write dirty code. It's very different from thou shalt always write perfectly clean code. So I think you get it.
Okay, great. Joshua, thank you very much. You are a very amazing talk. I hope this is going to stay with them. But do you know, our course has two parts. The first part is about technical talks and keynotes and whatever, and they have to program because, do you know, there's a balance also. In the university, we also have a balance. So I really would like to thank you again. It was a really amazing talk. And I hope to see you again in person, in face-to-face soon. I don't know.
I would love that. I would love that.
Count on us to have some caipirinhas and fruta do conde and whenever you want to come to Brazil.
So thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, pleasure. Well, take care, everyone. Good luck with your journey. And thank you.
Thank you very much.